And welcome everyone to Sports Talk Line, where we talk sports 24/7, 365. And on today's episode for Battle for the Big East, we got one of our top guests and someone who knows the Big East very well, as he coached at St. John's for 5 years, taking the program to 2 NCAA tournaments and 2 NIT bids. And I think you might have had a pro guy by the name of Mo Harkless who's doing okay right now. But welcome to the show, Coach Lavin. How are you feeling today?
Good. It's nice. Got an off day. I'm in Los Angeles and happy to be covering college basketball and navigating through these unusual times.
Yeah, I think, Coach Lavin, being a college basketball fan, you're just happy your team plays a game, let alone win. But it looks like, things are going on and progressing. And you know what, Coach, as crazy as this year has been, we've actually made it to pretty much the halfway point for the Big East. And we're going to give out some from MidSeason Awards, okay? And the first award we're going to give out of all, there was a lot of options out there. Who do you think so far is Player of the Year in the Big East?
Yeah, there are some great candidates. And when I factor the Player of the Year candidates, clearly the winning element or aspect needs to be in play as, part of the criteria. For instance, there's no doubt David Duke, in terms of his numbers, is as impressive as anyone in the conference.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm leaning heavily towards Colin Gillespie. And of course, it's early, but his numbers have been phenomenal. The 12 turnovers in 12 games. In my 32-year association with basketball as a head coach and assistant coach, broadcasting, going back as a head coach, and now back in broadcasting, I've never seen anything quite like it. Legend has it that Mike Warren, a guard for John Wooden, went a long stretch of games without a single turnover, but it was before they tracked turnovers in the box score. And so it's not official, but this run of Gillespie probably goes back to that era of Mike Warren and the UCLA Bruins under John Wooden. And the fact he handles the ball so much, he's shooting 44% from long distance, and Villanova 11-1, if I'm not mistaken, 6-0 in Big East play. And they seem to be just hitting all the right notes, as Jay Wright's teams so often do. So a slight edge to Gillespie over David Duke.
Gotcha. One player I might have to throw out there too, because he's on a very winning team right now. I might throw in Mitch Blaylock, because his team is getting the wins and he shows up in the gym, he's in range. I would love to see him and Steph Curry go at it in a 3-point contest.
Well, it's really interesting. I mean, you could also add, as St. John's gets hot, Julian Champagne's stock improves.
Mm-hmm.
Posh Alexander suddenly moves into the Freshman of the Year discussion along with Dawson Garcia, and we're going to get to those other categories, I know.
Mm-hmm.
But to your point, I think it's still possible for Marcus Zagorowski or a Mitch Blaylock, depending how they finish in terms of production and also winning. So this is early. It's almost like a halftime in terms of these, potential award winners.
Yeah, it is. And, at 2 weeks can totally change the narrative for a season. But, we talked about the main players, the Player of the Year. Let's go to the Sixth Man Award. Now, this one can be a little bit more difficult because the lineups are changing. There's been a rash of injuries. Just look at UConn. They've been hit by the injury bug. You got all this COVID stuff. Who do you think would be Sixth Man of the Year for in the Big East at this midway point?
I'm going to go with Justin Lewis. Now, what troubles me is Marquette has struggled, in this recent stretch of games, most recently losing to St. John's.
Mm-hmm.
But Justin Lewis's decision-making coming off the bench, the fact that he doesn't force, yet he is productive, I think close to 8 points or a little more than 8 points per game, and also gets on the glass and helps them with rebounding. He's got great length and anticipates well, so also picks up some block shots. And I think he has a really bright future. And right now, I give him a slight edge for the Sixth Man of the Year award. How about you? What are your thoughts?
I totally know. I love Lewis's game. I think he's a bulldog, and he brings a physicality and a toughness that Marquette hasn't had in a while. They had Theo John, who I think a lot of people look at and say, is this guy ever going to graduate? I'm waiting for him to finish up his eligibility, and his son is going to come right into Marquette. But, I definitely think Lewis is a good choice. Now we're going to switch up to, I kind of mentioned Theo John a little bit, and he kind of came in for this award, Most Improved Award. I think there's a lot of choices out there for this year. Who do you think would be the most improved this year?
Well, I think it's one of our Johnnies, Julian Champagny. Last year about 9 points a game. This year 20 points per game. Of late, he's really been ripping the cords, torching the nets, more aggressive on his catches, and his shooting accuracy has been lights out for the Johnnies in this successful stretch of games they've played. So again, back to the winning element being part of the criteria, with the Johnnies catching fire and Julian Champagny a critical piece to what Mike Anderson is doing in Queens. And of course, Posh Alexander, we'll get to him later, but I love his game as well.
Yeah, I don't know. Can you win a Most Improved in a conference if you're just a freshman in the conference? That's kind of something that we've never seen that happen, but you are seeing a lot of the freshmen develop well, and there's a few I want to name later. But I think for Most Improved, Coach Lavin, I went with Jared Roden from Seton Hall, right across the river from St. John's. Because I think Champagny, he kind of was expected to take that leap last year, and Champagny has improved. He has that step back three. He can score at all phases of the floor. He's a great free throw shooter, which you love to see in a 6'8" player. I just think Jared Roden was more unexpected to see this development. He's averaging 15 points a game, and Seton Hall is getting some wins. And I really think Seton Hall might be struggling right now, but I really think they're going to bounce back going forward. And now I think we go
just to build on that Roden point, because I concur and I agree. The steady progress from year to year has been impressive. He potentially has the best upside of any player on the Seton Hall Pirates team. And I could even build a case of anyone in the Big East. He reminds me some of a young Paul Pierce when Paul Pierce was at Kansas. He's adding, functional strength, and he'll continue to do that. I think with one more year, he's a potential lottery pick. He probably will have the option to go out and explore the market this year in terms of entering his name in the draft. But I think he'd be better served returning. But so smooth, gets to the kill spots on the floor, can stop and pop. There's just an ease and a fluidity that he plays the game with. And the great ones have that. In my career, Trevor Ariza, Maurice Harkless come to mind, just in terms of that grace. And that's something you can't teach. You're born with it, like great dancers, like a Fred Astaire, a Gene Kelly, a Baryshnikov, or Gregory Hines. So big on Jared Roden. I've been on that train since his freshman year. Special. Yeah.
And I think this one, is going to be a highly contested award coming forward. And this is Freshman of the Year. You had Dawson Garcia coming in from Marquette, and he's lived up to the hype. He's a 6'10". He plays almost a point forward, which you don't expect from a 6'10" freshman. You got Posh Alexander, who I think is the basketball equivalent to a junkyard dog. He's someone I think a lot of coaches love. And also you get Alan Breed from Providence, who's starting to step up. So out of that type of talent, who do you see getting the award for Freshman of the Year in the Big East? Or you know what? Let's just have them play a game of 21 and the winner gets that.
Right. Exactly. Let's see who finishes highest in the standings. We got to figure out some way to, separate one candidate from another. I'm going to go with Dawson Garcia, even though he's been somewhat uneven, high expectations. That's what comes with being highly touted, a McDonald's All-American, and the spotlight, the scrutiny that comes along with it. But, leading scorer of all freshmen in the Big East, leading rebounder of all freshmen in the Big East, a nice shooting percentage from long distance behind the arc. And he doesn't force from the 3-point line, but he's capable. If they pick and pop or they work him in isolation, he's capable of knocking down that shot. Now, I will say Posh Alexander's quickly becoming my favorite player of all the freshmen. His ball hawking defense and the tenacity, that sustained, relentless tenaciousness is what spearheading this St. John's attack. Obviously, he can push the ball in transition, but it's the point of pickup. He's so disruptive and you see him come up with big steals, and yet there's discipline within his defense. Sometimes you have someone passionate that's playing hard, but they're not as purposeful. They've got intensity, but they're not bringing the intelligence. Posh Alexander is bringing all those things as a freshman, and that's why he's literally and figuratively nipping at the heels of Dawson Garcia in that race for Freshman of the Year.
Yeah, Coach, you mentioned a good point with intensity and intelligence. And if you have that intensity and intelligence and love all this stuff, hit that like and subscribe button so you can subscribe to Sports Talk Line, where we talk sports.
Nice.
365. You know what, Coach Lav, I guess you and me, we got some of that chemistry. We're going right there where it's like, you know what, you mentioned some words. I got to jump in and know what? I think Dawson Garcia, he's someone who is so much better than his stats. He can do so much more. It's almost he can play the positions 1 through 5, and also he's 6'10". Posh Alexander, he's a junkyard dog. I don't know how. I think he's number 2 on the team in offensive rebounds, and I feel like he's someone who makes the winning plays, whether it's the offensive rebound and the dish off. But, man, he makes plays that the normal freshmen do not play, where he's coming down with steals at crucial situations, and his three-point shooting has improved. Now, this is something – the Coach of the Year award, you kind of went to battle against several of these coaches. So I'm going to be interested to see who you think is Coach of the Year award, and be prepared. I might respond with, are they buying you dinner or giving you a favorite bottle of vino delivered to your hotel? What do you think? Who do you think is Coach of the Year so far at the midseason point of the Big East?
Well, I think you're right. Of the 11 head coaches, I think I've faced 9 of them at one point or another, whether it was my time in the Big East, even Danny Hurley, when he was at Wagner, came in. Yeah. I think we played them a couple years at Carnesecca Arena. This is a tough race for Coach of the Year because, Creighton has persevered through the injury to Zagorowski and some different lineups. And they're coming on really strong. And I think in-game adjustments, Greg McDermott, one of the better, I call him a hip pocket coach. That means he's got a trick up his sleeve, not afraid to try something, whether it's a triangle and 2, a box and 1, switching to the zone at the right time in a game to disrupt an opponent's flow. And big comeback, I think from 16 down the second half against Seton Hall recently, and won in dramatic fashion. So I think Greg McDermott right there, but I'm going to give the slight edge. No shocker here. It's kind of like Tom Brady getting to a Super Bowl to Jay Wright. And not only because we've known each other, 25 years and are, good friends, but he's had the disruptions and the interruptions. They were out for almost 30 days and they've come back. They're 3-0 since. They won a close one against Seton Hall. And then they're starting to pick up and really dominate people. So they now have swept Seton Hall recently, played them both home and away. And I just like the way he tinkers with his lineup. They don't have a dominant front line. That's the only vulnerability I see. But they have the best 3 on the perimeter of anyone in my book, not only in the Big East, but in the country. When you look at Justin Moore and you look at Colin Gillespie, and then the free agent pickup from Tulane, Caleb Daniels, has just transitioned seamlessly. They only make 8 turnovers per game. Their magic number is about 10 3-pointers to pull off wins. And they play with purpose, but also confidence. So there is a system and a style of play, but there's freedom within it. And that's what I really enjoy watching. If I was a player, I'd want to play for Greg McDermott or Jay Wright, because they allow their players to play with freedom and confidence. They get that Emerald City green light. They've got to earn it, but you're not coming out of a game because you miss a shot. Now, if you don't rotate defensively, you don't check someone on the boards or check down on a free throw box out, or you're not strong with the ball, you'll come out, but not for missing a shot. And I think it's why those teams consistently shoot so well, both Creighton and Villanova, and they enjoy playing. There's a palpable joy. And Mike Anderson has that too, but it's more because of defense, pressure, and pace that they really enjoy playing that style of basketball as well.
Absolutely. I think if you're a basketball player, you would love either of those styles. I think Villanova, they've come out. They're the model program right now in NCAA basketball, not just the Big East, all across. I mean, just Jay Wright, Mr. Cool, his player hits one of the most important shots in the history of college basketball, and he just goes and shakes the coach's hand. It's like, how calm could you be? Jimmy Valvano was, broke the 40-yard dash record when his player did the same. So you got to go with that. As much respect as I have for Jay Wright, I think Mike Anderson, St. John's, depending on how they finish the season, could be in that. But I'm going to tell you why I'm going with Coach Greg McDermott, because I think last year they could win games scoring in the 70s and 80s, but now Creighton has a grittiness that they really haven't had before, and they can win games in the 60s. And I think the more versatile you are, if you can go out and as talented as Creighton is offensively, if they can win ugly, I can see them having a deep tournament run this year when that happens. But before we leave, we got some midseason awards. We're going to try to look forward a bit, okay? We're going to try to pick some stocks right now. We'll see if they rise like GameStop, to say the least. But which team do you think right now is rising in the Big East?
Well, as you alluded to, we talked about the Coach of the Year, those teams at the top that are separating some. Let's put them aside.
Yep.
And someone that's coming up through the ranks. Right now, St. John's is as hot as anybody. I'd say on the entire season, Xavier, the Musketeers, have really retooled their entire approach. So I give credit to their coaching staff, just the ability to, become more offensive oriented. Their struggles in the past years was because of their lack of shooting. And this year they're shooting the ball lights out. Yeah. There's more cohesiveness, more chemistry with that team. And there's more balance across the board. 5-6 players capable of getting 20 points or more on any given night. So I give Travis Steele a big thumbs up. He could be, by the end of the year, if they contend for the championship, another Coach of the Year candidate. And that's why so much of this is fluid, some moving parts based on how teams close out. So I would say Xavier, the most improved, the rising stock. If I went with a player, it's Marcus Zagorowski. In these last, 4-6 games, shooting 50% from the 3.5 assists, and just more comfortable coming off that knee injury and then some other issues with his hamstring. But he's the Tom Brady of Creighton. That operation, the Swiss watch, right? When they're clicking, Marcus Zagorowski is critical, functional, the kind of central nervous system of that team. So I think as a player, Zagorowski, but again, as soon as I say that, I'm thinking about Posh Alexander, the way he's been coming on as a freshman and the way he's influencing the success of St. John's. Because as a coach, I always come back to who's making winning plays, who's helping you close out W's, because those are the players that obviously you have the most respect for. That's why Brady's been to 10 Super Bowls.
Yeah, I think too, you say Marcus Zagorowski is the Tom Brady of the Big East. Based out of New York, who's the Eli Manning? Who's going to go out and get that upset win? Posh Alexander, even though they already played Creighton twice already and Creighton won pretty handily, I think this is a different St. John's team. And I think the team on the rise right now is St. John's. They got 4 wins. And also the St. John's faithful, if you really look at their roster, they could potentially return over 90% of their offense and 90% of their rebounding. And I think the key thing was when Josh Roberts was put back into that starting lineup, their defense was able to step up. They got that shot blocker, and all of a sudden, Josh Roberts is able to change some shots, and good things happen. Even though Josh Roberts, his numbers don't jump out off the page, St. John's is so much better. When he gets a rebound, it's an outlet to a quick layup. When he blocks a shot, it's a shot at the rim the other way. So I think St. John's is the team going forward. I think the player, we mentioned him before, I really like Alan Breed from Providence, and let me explain why. Because you already got the 3 established guys coming in. You have Nate Watson, David Duke Jr., and you got AJ Reeves. Those are supposed to be the 3 stars. You put David Duke in contention for Player of the Year if Providence gets some more wins. I think it's that more difficult to kind of find your role, especially as a freshman. But Breed has hit some big shots down the line, and I think he'll only get better. And I think as time goes on, once those guys leave, Breed will have the confidence, and as soon as in 2 years, he could be an all-conference first-team player.
I'll give you one more name. I agree with you. Very good point. Well presented. Kalkbrenner, the 7-footer for Creighton. Another example of what you mentioned. Creighton's a little grittier now. They can win games in the half court, played at a slower, more deliberate tempo, or scores in the 60s, a lower volume possession game. And a big part of that is the big fella, and he's improving, much like Romaro Gill last year did for Seton Hall. And 7-footers, they develop at a different rate. And Greg McDermott, a big man himself, understands that implicitly because of his own playing career. And so bringing along frontline players as he has really paid off in terms of improving their defense. Mahoney's great as the versatility. I love Christian Bishop in terms of his mobility, getting up and down the floor. But Kalkbrenner brings something different with that length and size, and he's getting more comfortable on his catches in the post, more confident with decisive moves in terms of, looking to score and be aggressive and put opponents in foul jeopardy. So those are some good names we just bantered about. And again, still some more games ahead of us for someone else to emerge.
Yeah, I totally agree. Now I'm going to hit you with one last award. Your favorite line is "Share the Sugar." That's the one all your colleagues love. Now you can go with a team or a player. Which team or player exemplifies, in your opinion, the best "Share the Sugar"? I think I know where you're going, but I just want to ask you that.
Well, like so many of these questions, and the different categories that we've touched on, maybe it's because it's what's most recent. And so Colin Gillespie enjoys the thrill of the pass, even when he uses that back down dribble. And the other 4 players on Villanova are rotating like the spokes on a wheel, and they make great reads, whether it's diving off the top of the floor or then replacing behind the ball. And in single coverage, Gillespie will go to work and draw a foul. If someone helps, he can rifle those passes out to his teammates for wide open looks. And that's good offense, deploying your personnel in a manner to take advantage of opponents' vulnerabilities. And they take turns inverting their offense. Sometimes Justin Moore's down there and Caleb Daniels goes down there and they step out their big. So really creative thinking by Jay Wright. And we've seen it before in the history of basketball, but not in a sustained way where there are stretches in a game where they basically run that type of offense. So, Villanova loves the pass, takes pride in their passes. But I'm going back to Posh Alexander, and he has a generous spirit. There's the tenacity, the toughness, but also he's all in for his team. And you can see that he is selling out for Mike Anderson, the staff, and his teammates. And that's why St. John's has such a bright future this year. And as you mentioned, down the line, because they're only going to get more acclimated to Mike Anderson's system. And as you mentioned, when they're at full strength, as they've been recently, you're seeing the results, because it's like a relay race. What Mike Anderson's looking at is wearing down teams in a cumulative fashion, and then they go on those 12-2, 15-4 runs. Those are the knockout punches, because if you have 2 or 3 of those and you trade baskets the rest of the game, that's how you get wins. But to do that, you've got to have the depth and quality depth, and obviously mental and physical conditioning. So Posh Alexander is a share the sugar in a different way. It's because he sells out on defense. He's diving on the floor. He's helping his teammates. He's digging in like a ninja on the post, dropping in there in the night to help the Johnnies. So, but Colin Gillespie, the 12 turnovers in 12 games is still a statistic that just blows my mind. I mean, I don't think there's a statistic in college basketball right now more impressive than 12 games and 12 turnovers, given he's handling the ball and running things for Villanova.
Yeah. All right, Coach Lavin, thank you for coming on. Before we leave, you can tell us where we can find you on Twitter or any other form of social media.
Let's see. So obviously on FS1 and Fox Sports during the regular season, Yahoo Sports and Turner, CBS when we go to the postseason. And then it's Steve Lavin 64 is the Twitter and the Instagram.
All right. Thanks for coming on, Coach.
Enjoyed it.
And remember, listen like you play with intensity.